think the biggest lesson in 2024 is that American political experts really don't know what they're talking about.
Is it rational for American military manufacturing to be heavily dependent upon China? No, it's not.
Even the trains are not on time, or actually never on time. It's crazy. It's Germany. The trains are not on time. The planes couldn't take off because they can't load the luggage onto the planes.
They're thinking about the spy balloon, which was maybe a weather balloon, but doesn't matter. They're thinking about the balloon and how awesome it was when we shot it down with a $1 million missile, because more expensive means better.
大家好，今天要分享的视频是今年年初李世默在匈牙利参加一档谈话节目的节选。在这一段谈话中，李世默与匈牙利国际事务研究所所长格拉登一起，围绕2024年国际政治教训、2025年危机预判、中美关系、欧洲的沦落及全球南方崛起等议题展开探讨。李世默主要谈到这么几个观点：第一，美国政治专家群体已经变得非常不靠谱，对国际政治的预测失灵已成为常态。第二，特朗普再次当选美国总统将降低全球战争风险。第三，中美博弈实质上是反全球化与再全球化两股力量的较量。第四，欧洲彻底沦落，其不顾自身利益的行为让人匪夷所思。第五，全球南方，特别是以中国为核心的金砖国家，正在成为一支越来越重要的力量。格拉登也有精彩发言，他不认同李世默所说的，特朗普以及他的支持者实际上更倾向于一个多极世界。他认为要让美国有这样的认知几乎不可能。美国的关注点仍停留在让美国再次强大等具象诉求上，但外部世界的倒逼有机会让美西方再次实现自我革新，帮助他们在多极世界里能应付自如。我们看看他们是怎么说的。
I would like to ask you what you consider to be the biggest lesson or lessons of 2024 from an American, a European, and a Chinese point of view.
I think the biggest lesson in 2024 is that American political experts really don't know what they're talking about. It's just unbelievable. It's just been so long that they call everything wrong. In 2016, that's forgivable. In 2020, they called it all wrong. And this time they said they've adjusted all the polling mechanisms. They made adjustments. They said they have assigned different weights to everything. And still, they got it so completely wrong. So something is wrong in the American political expert class. America is an important country, of course, to all of us. So in order to understand the trajectory of the United States, I think we should probably come to Hungary more. And we can't be reading these American experts.
So we are going to start next year with a new US administration. We're going to have a new European Commission. There are ongoing conflicts, as we heard in Europe and also in the Middle East. So we have a lot to deal with, and I think we can all agree that it's likely to be a very dangerous year. But what are the main perils that you see in the coming year?
Well, let me sound a note of optimism. I think several things that happen in 2024 that could make 2025 a little bit better. One is, I think, the returning of President Trump to the American presidency. In one respect, could make the world better, because President Trump is manifestly uninterested in military adventurism. He's not a military adventurer. I think it's true that the claim that he was the first American president since many years who did not start a war on his watch. And I think that hasn't changed from his public speeches, from the views that he has expressed, he is less inclined to embark on military confrontations around the world. So I think that actually, at a high level, reduces the chances for war in the world. Okay, that's number one. Second thing that's, I think, that cause for optimism is 2024 was a year that we really witnessed the rise of the Global South in a material way. And the Global South has become an enormous, self-conscientious, self-aware force in the world, and it's very big and very diverse and very influential. So the enlargement of BRICS, for instance, in 2024, I think would lead to the world being more prosperous and peaceful. And the third is, I think in our neighborhood, in China's neighborhood, 2024 has been a very successful year for China to reach a more peaceful environment in the Western Pacific. So the relationship with ASEAN has improved tremendously. China is now very friendly with Malaysia, Indonesia. In the South China Sea, with all the, with one exception maybe, with all the other claimants in the South China Sea, I think China has improved the relationship with them. It's notably with Vietnam. And there's seems to be a rapprochement with India, which is very promising. So I think in China's immediate surrounding, with one or two exceptions, we're in a much more peaceful environment for 2025.
So we can conclude that the foreign policy conducted by the Trump administration will be a rational, a realist one, but and probably he won't be invested in military conflicts too much. But what we see is that, like, he announced like heavy tariffs on Chinese products, and my question is how is China supposed to react to that, or what are the expectations of China on that, and how should Europe navigate in such a situation?
I think let's put this in a larger context. I think the two forces that are shaping our world today are the forces of deglobalization and the force of reglobalization. Okay, so we're at the end of this first round of globalization that's been happening post-Cold War for the last 30 to 40 years. And many countries benefited from that globalization. China, of course, is one of the biggest beneficiaries. And I would say America also is a great beneficiary of this round of globalization. But what's happened is that within the United States, all the benefits of globalization went to very few people. And the vast majority have not benefited as much. So it's leading to a revolt. So the current round of globalization that's ending was led by the United States and the West. And now the primary force of that globalization is retreating from it, is deglobalizing. So that's, I think all that, the tariff talk, the trade war talk was part of this larger picture. But at the same time, China, of course, is the largest trading country in the world and in human history. China's continued development relies on continuing economic interconnectedness with the rest of the world. Okay. So China's attempting a re-globalization, and you see that in Hungary, with the automobile manufacturing being put out here, and that's all new. So these two forces have their own secular drives, and they are opposed to each other in some ways, but they coexist. So I think tariff and trade war is part of it, but China's of course developing new globalizing tools, new globalizing trends around the world as well.
Well, no, I think one main danger that this dialogue can address is that, and this is a little bit what we were talking about beforehand with Eric, is that right now, and it almost sounds like a liberal globalist thing for me to say, but global mutual understanding is at a very low level, particularly after the COVID pandemic. So much so that Americans are not aware, and I think many Europeans are not aware what happens in China and vice versa. And this affects everyone. Obviously, this is not the only relationship. I'm not trying to say something trite. But after the COVID pandemic, all these exchanges went down. And so when I go back to the US and I run into Tesla drivers, I tell them, I've been driving around in Budapest a lot, and I saw an amazing looking SUV the other day, which I assumed was a Porsche SUV. And I looked a little bit more closely, and it was a BYD SUV. And the point is not that BYD or Tesla is better, but that in order for the US to make good decisions as it faces the principal challenges to it, and China is definitely a challenge to it, there's no point in denying that, it has to have this better mutual understanding, which comes in other conflicts and disputes as well through discussions like this. So I think that there are a lot of things that, when it comes to the U.S. relationship with China, that could be on the table. It's not going to play out the way that Professor Sachs suggested, with the U.S. just making the declaration that he said. For example, is it rational for American military manufacturing to be heavily dependent upon China? No, it's not. I mean, from a basic national sovereignty standpoint, unless there are very good reasons for allowing the components of your key weapons to be made by an adversary or potential competitor, it's irrational. What was it that led to that happening? This is where I'm plugging into, going to echo what you said about different types of globalization. There was in that first period of globalization, the intellectual framework that went with it was the post-Cold War, very excited, very enthusiastic liberalism. Borders won't matter anymore. That's how we'll get rid of disputes. We'll have global culture instead of national culture. That's how we get rid of disputes. That's how we avoid the bugbear of nationalism coming back. And that led to a lot of bad decisions being made. Is it China's fault that the US made a lot of bad decisions after 2001? No, I mean, they were just taking advantage of the situation. But we don't fully have the alternative framework. Hungary has been trying to build it with this concept of connectivity plus the national interest, where it's very highly engaged throughout the world, but also pursuing its national interest. The dream would be if all nations can begin to pursue something like that. There are issues between the United States and China on trade. It's not rational to have key components made elsewhere. So if you were President Trump and you wanted to engage in a negotiation, that's something that's important to you. The other side has some things that are important to it. There will probably be a lot of blunderbuss beforehand and afterward, and we'll see over the next few years whether a rational solution can come out. But to begin with, we need a new perception on what the entities are, what the countries are, what the building blocks are of a different international framework, and what the underlying forces are that are likely to plug into that. And I think we've made some progress on that today.
I just wanted to add that the car, the BYD, even if it were a Tesla, the chances are it's a Tesla imported from China. Okay. But I absolutely get your point. I mean, I think actually these mistakes go both ways. The Chinese were asleep at the wheel on semiconductor, for instance. I mean, to hand such an incredibly important part, just totally reliant on foreign production, is absolutely crazy, and they're getting their head handed to them right now. I worry about Europe. Let me use the example of Germany. I was in Germany a couple of times this year. I used to worship Germany. Yeah, I go to Germany. The country was always perfect to me. Everything was efficient. Everything was on time. Extremely well designed. But I don't know if you know. I mean, you're close to Germany. Germany is in trouble. The German economy is in trouble across the board, and it's very, very sad and very, very concerning to see. I mean, even the trains are not on time, or actually never on time. It's crazy. It's Germany. The trains are not on time. The planes couldn't take off because they can't load the luggage onto the planes. So I asked what's happening. It turned out that there's been across the board substantial increase in cost in German industry across the board because of the military problem, military conflicts. Okay, so how could a country like Germany do things so against its own interests? How? Who are running Germany? I mean, so if Europe, if that's a reflection of Europe, I mean, if Europe cannot determine its own destiny, if somehow the European leaders cannot make decisions based on the best interests of their peoples, somehow they're following some other agenda. That, I think, is problematic. I mean, we want a better world, to me, is a world in which leaders of different countries, different regions, make decisions based on the best interests of their peoples. It may have conflicts, it may have disagreements, but that's a better world. And I'm not sure if Europe could do that in the future.
Just to end this conversation on a more positive note, hopefully, let's talk a little bit about the Global South. I mean, we've been talking about the Global South all day, and we were also discussing whether we are witnessing an emerging multipolar world or not. Do you think that multipolarity would be a remedy for all the problems that we are witnessing now?
I think the primary contradiction in our world today are between the forces that are trying to construct a multipolar world and the forces who want to preserve a unipolar world. Okay, and these forces, these two forces, we could assign them to different countries or assign them to different forces within the same country. Okay, so there are countries and there are interest groups who derive interest from trying to maintain a unipolar world. Okay, so if you look at America, for instance, I would venture to guess that, I'm not an expert, you tell me if I'm wrong, that Mr. Trump and many of his supporters are actually in favor of a more multipolar world because the unipolar world is not benefiting them. It's benefiting the few people at the top, and it's costing the rest of the country. I like to say the American empire is being maintained at the expense of the American nation. So the costs are tremendous to the people, and that's why they're revolting against it. So I think that's how we want to see the Global South in that context. What we have in common among virtually all the Global South countries is that we'd like to have a multipolar world and a more inclusive world.
Well, it can be hard for Americans to look outside and hard to see what's going on. And so I think it would be a bit too much to ask the incoming Trump administration to say, you know, what we want is a multipolar world, because I think to the average Trump voter, it sounds a little bit weak. They voted for Trump because they want America to be strong again. And that can be the case. It's definitely not going to be the case in the same way that it was in the mid-1990s or in the post-Cold War era before it started to go sideways. But, the average American voter, when they think about what sort of world could result from a new relationship with China, they're not thinking about, well, there could be a multipolar world and a Chinese, maybe it's a sphere of influence or something. They're thinking about the spy balloon, which was maybe a weather balloon, but doesn't matter. They're thinking about the balloon and how awesome it was when we shot it down with a $1 million missile, because more expensive means better. This is very important to think within this framework. So there are some scenarios in which America becomes more of a multipolar player and also feels strong. For example, the Monroe Doctrine. America has always had a natural interest in South America, and that has become much more complicated in the last few years, in part through increasing activity of China in the region, but the US has definitely not played it right. So if it plays its hand better there, well, it could be navigating that well in a multipolar world. Part of the problem is also that the emerging institutions don't look like the old institutions. I think we encountered this at a lot of different points today, and therefore we don't know what to expect. Everyone's always expecting another European Union. Well, if BRICS doesn't become another European Union, is it really a thing? These sorts of questions. That to me is like a secondary or tertiary question. Right now what's happening is that the more that the liberal, universalist, Western institutions pursue their old end, the more they're causing the opposite reaction, as I said at the beginning. So weaponizing the Western financial system ended up creating or prompting the creation of a lot of new types of exchange and settlement mechanisms, which are really just beginning. So this could be good because it could prompt the West to reinvent itself again. It's very good at that. America has clearly proven that it's good at that. People are always asking me if America is about to descend into civil war. Well, I mean, it's such a big country that people move around, everyone becomes happier, and then it manages to reinvent itself again. Seems to be more difficult for Europe to do. But if the West, the US, if Europe can reinvent themselves and become a really positive player in this kind of changing system, then it will be a good result. So that is possible. And if we have more exchanges like the type we had today, where people are laying out their national viewpoint and their perspectives on the existing institutions and their thoughts about the new ones, I mean, if there were 500 platforms like this, then we might actually prompt that change.
可以看到，李世默的发言依然保持自己鲜明的个人特质，既打破了传统国际政治讨论的精英话术体系，又能精准击中受众对全球议题的认知痛点。说白了，就是他讲话直白尖锐，不讲废话。他拒绝模糊的外交辞令与迂回的逻辑铺垫，用嘲讽、调侃甚至辛辣的语气直击问题核心。例如在评价美国政治专家时，直接指出他们根本不知道自己在说什么；批评欧洲时，以德国火车不准时这一直观细节为切口，直指欧洲无法主宰自己命运的深层困境。李世默还擅长跳出主流话语框架，提出与西方精英叙事相反的观点。例如在2025年危机预判中，当时大多数声音都担忧特朗普连任的风险，他却认为特朗普对军事冒险主义不感兴趣，可能降低世界发生战争的几率。在全球化议题上，他不盲从全球化已经寿终正寝的共识，而是提出中国推动再全球化的对立视角。在中美关系、多极世界等议题上，他立场明确，既不刻意讨好西方受众，也不回避中国存在的问题。例如，在格拉登谈到美国军事制造业严重依赖中国，让对手或潜在竞争对手来制造关键武器的零部件是不合理的时，他坦诚中国也犯了类似的错误，在半导体领域完全依赖美国，导致现在正自食恶果，陷入被动局面。总体而言，李世默与格拉登的这段对话 既揭示了当前全球政治的核心矛盾，单极与多极的博弈，认知鸿沟与利益冲突的交织，也为未来发展指明了方向。唯有尊重各国主权，增进相互理解，推动多极合作，才能在逆全球化与再全球化的博弈中实现全球的持久和平与共同繁荣。而欧洲能否摆脱外部依赖，美国能否放下对抗思维，全球南方能否持续凝聚力量，将成为影响2025年及未来全球秩序走向的关键变量。